May we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Prince?
Here.
Mr. Person? Ms. Witchy? Mr. McGurven?
Here.
Ms. Perez?
Here.
Mr. Pavoni?
Here.
Mr. Corman?
Here.
Roll call, Mr. Mayor, 2 absent.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Prince.
I move we excuse the absent council members.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Prince, second by Mr. Corman, that we excuse Councilmember Person and Councilmember Witchy. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. So moving on to a special presentation on Nature's Scorecard.
So, thank you, Mary Law and City Council. My name is Danielle Shaw. I am the Government Affairs Manager for Washington Environmental Council as well as Washington Conservation Voters.
And I'm Sophia Ressler, and I am a staff attorney with Puget Soundkeeper.
And we're here tonight to present Nature's Scorecard, but also to present the city with an award as a Green Star leader in this work that we were documenting and tracking for a number of years now. We feel like your city has shown a lot of leadership around green stormwater infrastructure, especially low impact development. And we want to talk a little bit about the scorecard and why we thought you guys did such great work.
So just as a quick reminder, an overview, stormwater from cities and counties in the Puget Sound area and Washington in general is regulated by a permit under the authority of the Clean Water Act. And the purpose of the permit is to prevent pollution from getting into our waterways. So the journey for our two organizations to get low impact development into the municipal stormwater permit was a long one, and it started about 10 years ago. We appealed that permit 10 years ago, and in 2012, Ecology finally came out with a permit that required municipalities to implement low impact development within their municipal codes. So a critical piece of this, as part of the permits, cities and counties were required to update their development codes to make low impact development the preferred and common approach to new and redevelopment.
So these low impact development code updates we tracked was obviously one small piece of a very big permit under the Clean Water Act, but we felt it was a critical piece for making progress for healthy communities looking into the future, and why we thought it was so important to tell communities how their leaders were doing on this. And to remind, this is more for folks at home, I'm sure you guys are aware, but low impact development is an alternative to sending stormwater straight to pipes and drains that go into our waterways. It's about using nature to do the work for us. It's about using nature and natural drainage to collect and filter that stormwater and protect us from flooding and from pollution.
And the reason that we think that's important is because we think that low impact development is critical for a healthy and sustainable future for communities around the Puget Sound region and our ecosystem and our infrastructure. This image is a really cool rendering of what low impact development can look like done by a student at the University of Washington, and this is an example of the Seattle waterfront. But things that low impact development can prevent are flooding. It can make communities more greener and more walkable. It cleans up pollution in the waterways, and it also can help to recharge groundwater. And the communities that are taking steps to implement LID are helping not only the health of people, but also salmon and orcas and all the other creatures that call the Puget Sound region home.
So describing it, and I'll let Sophia jump in, describing what Nature's Scorecard is, but you guys each have a copy of the Nature's Scorecard itself at your table, and it's also online for anyone that wants to take a look at it at naturescorecard.com.
So Nature's Scorecard is a culmination of years of work by Danielle and I, as well as other people at our organizations. It was a high-level review of all 81 Puget Sound municipalities that are covered by the municipal stormwater permit and their compliance with this permit. And we presented it as a scorecard for and have the opportunity for grassroots and celebration of great progress made. So we looked at this in a few different manners. We had a color coding system for levels of effort, which is the pie chart that you see with the red and green and yellow color coding. We also had checklists that showed what each municipality actually had within their codes, and then we have maps. And the purpose of all of this was to hone this wealth of data and create opportunity for grassroots voices and a celebration of great progress in some instances. So what we were looking for was transparency to both the public and to elected officials. We were looking for timeliness. There were timing requirements within the permit. We were looking for a public process and the chance for the public to engage, and meaningful and pertinent code revisions. So unfortunately, 50% of Puget Sound municipalities missed the mark on this and did not make those code revisions that will protect their community in the future. However, Renton was one of the 8 municipalities that we think went above and beyond in doing this work that was required of them, and is one of our Green Star leaders.
Another reason for doing it in this form, I'm sure you guys are all aware of your stormwater permit, and you've been through plenty of conversations with your staff on this, so it's not like we need to train you on what that permit does. This was really a tool to show your community what you're up to and try and create something accessible for your community use in those conversations as well, because the more people involved in stormwater management, the better. It's not just about infrastructure, it's about our daily lives and our personal choices. So we worked hard to create a good language that was accessible, use voices from the community, and break down simple concepts. We relied, when doing our assessment, to be as objective as possible on the 4 corners of every city and county's code. We did not look beyond that, but we looked throughout that. We also used the Ecology Endorsed Resource as a guide for how they were doing. We weren't basing this on what we thought you should do, we were basing this on what Ecology had demonstrated that every city and county were doing. And the biggest thing to create something for the community to understand what it means when you change your codes is we created 5 check marks and descriptions for each that we were looking for when we were scoring. So that would be softening our footprint for the community. What that meant was actually you guys just have impervious surface limits, and you guys have a great example of impervious surface limits. For building with care, that means when you're doing construction, your code has a lot of protections for native soils, native plants, fencing around those areas, making sure you're not doing it during the wet season when erosion can happen more easily. Improving filtration, that meant that you guys were starting to encourage permeable surfaces. The technology is there now. It's wonderful. It can be used on sidewalks. It can be used in parking lots, and it helps with our stormwater. The 4th check mark was growing the right trees. This was something that was really important to me. I think your staff knows what the right trees are for your community. I think a lot of developers do, but I don't know if the community does. And that's a great resource that your code's explicit on what are good trees to grow, because the community looks to your codes too when they're making decisions. And maintaining buffers, that's about critical areas. You guys know this well, but that's about making sure when we're talking about critical areas, we're talking about native vegetation and replanting native vegetation.
So Renton got all 5 check marks from this list, and we wanted to just go over a few examples of what Renton included in the code that impressed us so much. So for softening our footprint, Renton has a max impervious surface percentage breakdown by area. This is really important because it reduces the amount of hard surface on lots, and it allows for infiltration on those lots.
For building with care checkmark, you had extensive erosion and sediment control standards, especially for native vegetation, so this helped make sure you're maintaining all those native systems that are already in play on land.
For improving filtration, you have permeable required for off-street parking and pedestrian circulation areas. And this permeable surfacing, again, it's about infiltration, so it actually allows rainwater to soak through rather than just running right off of it into waterways.
For growing the trees, you guys have an explicit tree list that everyone can access. It's very easy to find. You also have spacing requirements, which is actually very rare but really important.
And then for maintaining buffers, you have buffers that have to consist of native vegetation, and you also have areas identified for restoration and established to protect the integrity, functions, and value of their affected habitats. So we as I told you before, thrilled to say that Renton received this Green Star designation. You guys had a transparent process, you had interdepartmental efforts, you had a thoughtful approach, and you had strong leadership on all of this. So thank you to the council for supporting this, but also many accolades to your staff. This was definitely a heavy lift, and they did a really awesome job. For any community members in the audience right now, we also want to make sure that you guys are giving thanks to staff and council, so it's not just us coming up here to do it all the time. And we also want you as council members to know that Renton did a fantastic job, but as I showed you before, you were definitely the exception, not the rule. So we encourage you to use your positions to encourage others, municipalities and surrounding municipalities, to look to you as that leader and to brag to them about it, but to also tell them that they should be stepping up as well.
So again, we hope we've turned something wonky into something accessible, like something impactful. I think as a quick anecdote for what this means for us, I had a friend that just bought a house in Renton, and I told her, and I just got done reviewing Renton's code, and I said, that is amazing. I am so excited for your future based on even what I've just seen in your codes. Not only is it a great place now, but you guys have set the stage for real wonderful progress. So thank you. Thank you for letting us present tonight. Thank you for taking such leadership on this, and we're grateful for the time. We also have an award to present to Mayor Law. If you'd like to come down.
Very nice. Can we get a group photo after this too?
I can think of a couple of citizens we're going to send this report to as well.
If any of you have any questions before we,
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for coming tonight. We really appreciate it. We always love to be one of the top cities in Kane County, so we appreciate you coming out here. We'll make sure all of our department heads and staff receive the kudos for the work they've been doing, and we appreciate the awards that you brought along. So thank you.
Drop it, you mean?
Okay, moving on to administrative report, Mr. Covington.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Council, two items. A reminder again, the Medicare starts a year-long project to replace all current Medicare cards. They will send something in the mail. They will not call you unless you call them. So if you get a phone call, particularly if you get a phone call asking for your personal information, that is not Medicare. The other item is tomorrow from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m., the City of Renton and the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, will host a public meeting to discuss updates to flood plan maps based on new data about flood hazards, what it means to own property in or near a floodplain, and the current appeal and comment period to those revised maps. They give residents an opportunity to discuss with them, learn a little bit more about the current preliminary floodplain maps. The meeting will be held at our Renton Community Center at 1715 Maple Valley Highway. Again, that's tomorrow night, 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. That's all, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Covington. We don't have anybody signed up for audience comment, but I know a couple people came in later. Was there anybody who wanted to address the council? Okay, moving on to consent agenda. We have 10 items for council consideration. Are there any items that council member would like pulled for discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mr.
I would
McIrvin.
I'd like to pull item H.
H, okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Prince.
I move we approve consent agenda minus item H.
Second?
Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Prince, second by Mr. Corman, that council concur with the consent agenda minus item H. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Mr. McGurven.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is just a routine item that we do for every budget, and there's nothing unusual about this contract. And this will allow the rates to be run in time to prepare the budget. So with that, I'd like to move that we put this item council concur.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Mr. McGurven, seconded by Mr. Prince, that item H of the consent agenda be a concur item, council concur item. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Okay, unfinished business, Mr. Prince.
No unfinished business, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Mr. McGurven.
No unfinished business, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Ms. Perez.
No unfinished business, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Mr. Pavoni.
No unfinished business, Mr. Mayor.
And Mr. Corman, did you do any work?
And not this week, no. No unfinished business.
All right. Moving on to legislation, we have one resolution tonight.
This is a resolution of the City of Renton, Washington, declaring an emergency for the purposes of replacing, repairing traffic signal pole on Northeast 4th Street and Duval Avenue Northeast.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Prince.
I move the resolution be adopted as read.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Prince, second by Mr. Pavoni, that this resolution be adopted as read. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you for that. I think you all saw that that was a traffic pole that had been hit by a car, a pretty serious accident, and was about ready to fall down, so we had to move forward and get that taken care of. Okay, moving on to new business, Mr. Prince.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Committee of the Whole on Monday, March 26th, will be in the conferencing center, and we have two items on the agenda: economic development, downtown revitalization update, and Civic Corps Quick Wins recommendation on implementation. And that's all, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Mr. McGurven.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a couple of committee meetings to announce. First, at 3:30 p.m. on Thursday, March 22nd, the Utilities Committee will be meeting in the council conference room. There are 4 items on the agenda: Cedar River Maintenance Dredge Project Agreement with Geoengineers, 2017 update to the Water Resources Inventory Area RIA 8 plan, multifamily solid waste billing, and finally, emerging issues in utilities. And then, right after utilities, at 4:30 p.m. in the council conference room, also on Thursday, March 22nd, the Planning and Development Committee will be meeting with 4 items on that agenda: docket discussion, multifamily tax exemption, cities center plan discussion, and emerging issues in CED. And then finally, if I can take a moment to share, I was out last week representing the city of Renton in DC at the National League of Cities Congressional Conference. Had the pleasure to go and meet with our members of Congress, sharing important issues about advocating for infrastructure and improvements, obviously, for our airport here. It was a great pleasure to go. Without getting into too many of the weeds, but it was a very, very worthwhile trip, so thank you.
It was great to have you representing us, Brian. Thank you. Ms. Perez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On behalf of Councilmember Don Person, I will announce that the Finance Committee will be meeting on the Council Conference Room on Monday, March 26 at 5 o'clock. There are 4 items in the agenda: authorization to purchase Cobalt Tech units, business license online filing system, voucher, and emerging issues in revenue streams. That will be it.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Pavoni?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, the Public Safety Committee meeting scheduled for March 26th has been canceled.
Okay, and Mr. Corman, are you going to work this next week?
I'm going to do a lot of work, but we're not going to have a transportation committee meeting this week.
Okay, thanks. What's the wish of the council?
Move we adjourn.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Prince, second by Mr. Pavoni, that we adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned.